So as we mentioned, now we're gonna take the theoretical and put it into the applicable here, and we got a great panel of book folks to tell us kind of what they're doing in the book market with automation and robotics. But I guess you heard a lot of stuff from Dr. Dan around all the different possibilities. So based on what you heard, what do you think about what he said and how that's going to affect you moving forward? And I guess we'll just start with you, Christian.
All right. I guess I'm up first since I said.
Yeah, that's sorry. That's what happens.
That sounds good. For us at Mercury, it's fascinating because it's obviously going to play a big role into the future of, I think, just manufacturing in general. We try to look at print. I know it's somewhat unique. We don't create widgets, but it's still a form of manufacturing. So as a company, we're always looking at ways as pretty much everybody out there on how we can automate, how we can reduce our profits, how we can continue to remain relevant out there, how we can attract youth into this industry. And as we just heard, it's exciting. It's a way to get people in it. And so one of the things we're doing at Mercury and taking a look at is actually creating a position within our company where we're focused, and their sole job is to look at how we can utilize AI, whether it's a chat GPT at this point, or creating just a need or to see and kind of research how it's going to affect our business, along with the current robotics that are already in. And as the gentleman from Heidelberg was speaking about, just in terms of material movement and replacing things that are repetitive.
Yeah. Todd, anything that he said that struck a chord?
Yeah. Todd Roth, I'm with Thomson Reuters. And if you think of Thomson Reuters as an organization, we're really a content technology company. And we happen to, provide content to our customers in a lot of different ways. And one of those is with books. And we've been doing books for a long time. So when this topic came up, we've looked at automation in the plant with tools from Andy and from certainly a lot of other suppliers. But also think of what does AI mean for us. And within our content side of our operation technology, we're doing a lot with AI. So how do we try to bring some of those concepts and thoughts down to our plant? And we're just in the infancy of it, of having them walk through with us and say, have you thought about how you're collecting data? Have you thought about, where would you have the biggest impact? I wish I was further along. We don't have a person, identified, but at least we feel like we've got some people inside our organization that can walk us down that path a little bit, to go along with some of the automation that we do in conjunction that most of us do in our plants today.
Can I add something to that? And Todd, you bring up a good point, because even from the AI standpoint, I know we're talking a lot about manufacturing here, but when you look at like Pricewater, Coopers, they're investing $1 billion into it, into AI and chat GPT in terms of tax preparation, sales, you name it. So there's so much more functions to our business rather than just the manufacturing side that we can look at the implications that it's going to have on us.
Coming from the manufacturing side, we've heard a lot about robots and cobots, but automation is a lot more than that, not just to add a different perspective. You look at systems that we have today, and many of my partner companies in manufacturing, it's not just about cobots, and material handling is the lowest hanging fruit for that. When you look at systems now, we have systems that, I know Bob Jones University just put in a complete roll-fed book line with a web press, a very wide, fast web press feeding into our folder, into our binder, and many thousand books per hour from a blank roll to a finished shrink wrap product with 3 people running the whole line. So you think about robots, we did the ultimate of robots by finding the intelligence to connect Industry 4.0, connect intelligent devices together to make them more intelligent. That's the basis definition of Industry 4.0. 5.0 with the people that are involved, with the 3 people. But making books at high speeds, high volume, now there's limitations to what can be done, format, substrate limitations that make it really productive. But that's automation that we've embraced through software integration, through tactile and custodial control of the systems all the way through with partner integration to allow for fully automated production of books from a blank roll to a shrink wrap product. So that's a great example of automation. So when you think automation, and he said it, Dan said it, it's machine reliability, repeatability, scalability, and efficiency. It doesn't necessarily need to be robots. So I applaud all of you to look at that and understand how you can take your processes now, even if you're not looking to buy a cobot tomorrow, to integrate systems to be more intelligent and more efficient, because they are very active today, and myself and my peers out there are doing great jobs in integrating the solutions.
So, and I'll push this more to Christian and Todd as the printers, but, Andy just talked about the fully integrated line, and that I've been visiting a lot of you all and a lot of other members who aren't here, and that seems to be the consensus, right? If anybody's investing any money into equipment, it's because it's taking people off the floor, right? It's taken a 8-person crew to a 3-person crew because of new equipment and inline automation, that kind of thing. So what of any of that have you guys implemented in your shops, or what are you planning on implementing any of that in terms of that automation? And is the goal more around lowering headcount, because as the morning went on, obviously workforce is an issue, but or is it about extra capacity, better quality, or all of the above? What's that kind of look like for you guys?
I just kind of say yes, all the above. From that standpoint, what we've done is we've really taken a look at what our labor costs are in general in an effort to reduce our labor costs, because as with many companies, it's one of your largest costs out there. In addition, we want to be able to increase our capacity. So we really look at what we would call the low-hanging fruit, what requires the most labor, and how can we look to automate that, and then push any money we're going to go into investments towards that. So a lot of that just suppliers like Muller, Martini, and partners like that, just working together to solve those challenges that are facing all of us in the industry.
Maybe I'll answer this a little bit differently. As a book manufacturer, we do a wide variety of type of work. In the legal and tax space that we actually publish and print, a lot of it's high page count, lightweight paper. We also do trade work. We do education work. So we're in a lot of different spaces. So when it comes to trying to put different pieces of equipment together, the more variability there is, the more challenging it becomes. And then, the frequency of make ready. I mean, obviously, the more automated we get with those make readies, it helps. But it has us stopping and saying, how many pieces do we want to put together, and what makes most sense at this point in time? And so we've got, cut sheet inkjet, we've got roll fed inkjet, and we've got zero make ready web presses. And so each of them has their own roles. And then it gets into a bit of automation for quality in different ways that just kind of are one-off things for us. I think probably we all do it. Like when we're going to load a plate today, we scan a barcode on that plate, and it assigns to make sure that we're putting the upper unit 1 plate in its proper place so we don't have pages out of order. So try to help on some of those poke-yoke sort of things that we can do one-off. So some of that automation we're doing, for quality as opposed to like productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, we were hanging out in Austin just several days ago, right? Inkjet Summit, and your case study around what you guys are doing. Obviously, you talked about the Bob Jones thing, but what else do you see your customers doing, and what are they optimizing for, similar to what Todd just said?
A lot of our customers who are a little more mature in the automation space are looking for, there's a lot of file to print workflows out there, fantastic file to print workflows. Well, we can file to finish product workflows. That's what we're looking for. And, we are proud to say, and again, many of my peers out in the industry are proud to say that we can provide solutions that can even impose and optimize and gang the work intelligently, not for printing capabilities, because there's an ideology at Muller Martini, we call it finishing 4.0, modeled off finishing 4.0. Everyone was smart enough to even trademark that name. And it's an ideology of using touchless workflow to drive automation through connectivity to address the variability in the printing industry. And what that it really comes down to is finding different ways through XML feeds, through barcodes, through intelligent tracking systems of, like I mentioned earlier, to develop solutions that are not only more productive, but that eliminate the human touch where you can have human failure of data, bad data entry, bad setup of a trimmer, whatever it might be, having all this done automatically through this touchless workflow. And these are the things that we constantly strive on through organic projects. We didn't make this all in a day. We developed the concept many, many years ago, and through organic projects, we developed solutions together with everyone in this room to develop solutions that are more intelligent, more automated. And of course, AI and of course, robotics will come into play in the near future. And that's what we really spend time on. 90+% of all investment in R&D at Muller Martini is in digital finishing, which obviously has that automation component to it.
So, I mean, Christian, you mentioned, the AI stuff, and obviously it's growing quickly, right? I mean, I think Chat GPT is the fastest to 100 million users of anything ever, and it's not like, it's like 100x how much that it's grown. So it's obviously a big buzz. It's here. People are trying to figure it out. And Andy just mentioned workflows. So, we were talking about robots and automation. That's hardware. How much do you think AI, or even take AI out of it, but how much of automation comes into play from a software side of things?
I think it's going to be huge, especially in the future. Was anybody at the GUA conference that Kodak just put down on? And really, I don't know how many users are out there with Printergy and whatnot, but where it's headed, even from the software workflow standpoint, has us very excited, because it's really interesting to see how we can streamline the whole digital front end and workflow standpoint, as well as the order entry input, through the use of whether it's an XML feed coming from ERP systems, to automating just how these files are going to be processed and treated, really just with no human interaction, whether it's an agent utilizing AI, which an agent is a lot of the newest buzzwords out there with that, pretty much using AI to drive AI in essence, which is phenomenal. So along with that though, Matt, one thing I kind of wanted to go back to Andy real quick, if you don't mind, because with what you're doing on the workflow and stuff, I think it's awesome. And I wanted to ask a question, and maybe other people are interested in it too. It's unscripted completely, so I apologize, Matt. But one of the things we've always struggled with as a company is maintenance. And we spend a lot of money on maintenance. We lose a lot of downtime for maintenance. If we're not doing it, the equipment can be down for longer and a lot of costs. Are you guys doing anything looking at AI or software with sensors and whatnot for more predictive maintenance?
That's a great question. And absolutely. To the point today, what's out in the field, we have a lot of fully integrated software feedbacks that allow you to have real-time data coming out of the PLC of the different components to our Connect workflow. It's not predictive yet. It's real-time, and it gives you information that this feeder keeps jamming, or you're having a problem with that cover deck, whatever it is, instant feedback that you can jump on right away. Obviously, to complement that going forward, we're working on predictive sensors and predictive ways to be a step ahead of you being able to understand that bearing's warming up in there, and you better get someone to rebuild that cylinder, because if you don't, it will cause a hard down. Maybe get parts that same day through our support, but nonetheless, it's still hours to a day or so before you're back up and running. So predictive maintenance is certainly in the realm for the near future, and something that we continue to look at.
Well, and I think a lot of folks, and again, this may not be new to anybody else, but I think one of the cool things I heard from a lot of the case studies at Inkjet Summit was the use of VR in maintenance. And are you guys, Todd, or any of you, are you guys using that to help?
We have a Google Glass initiative.
Okay.
We happened to choose them. We looked at all of them, and it allows us to, it's kind of in its early stages, but allows us in really hard situations to use the engineers in Switzerland or Germany to see, well, Jimmy, put on the glasses, let me take a look. And he goes like this, and he's able to still have his hands free and do what he says. Okay, touch this, now do this. And it in really harder situations where it's difficult problems to solve, it's really very helpful. It's not where every one of our service engineers has Google glasses yet, but it is. We have several sets we use strategically when we run into these difficult situations. It can be. We mostly use it with our engineers on site, but we're looking at furthering it by saying, listen, we can't get someone there because it's just so busy. We'll send you the glasses and you have a good technician on site that we trained during the installation phase. We'll put the glasses on and we can better see. We have 24/7 support. We can remote into your technology, but sometimes that's just to see the error codes, to see the settings in the machine, which all of our peers can do. It's going one level further, having that type of VR to allow us to see better.
Good thing about being moderator, I can just get up and walk around if there's questions.
Is anybody from HP here? They can speak officially for HP. So I was an attendee at the event in Lucerne. You're from HP? Okay. So, congratulations. So they demonstrated, at least from a customer view, if you looked at their page wide in Lucerne, they've got those glasses, but it's more from a end user perspective. As, how can they interface with the folks in Corvallis or elsewhere to help get the machine back? And it was pretty compelling from an end user perspective as opposed to the technology provider's perspective. It's got to come from both sources, right? You got to have people with VR on both ends of that. So I thought that was a cool demo.
Yeah. And Andy, I keep trying to tee you up here for your favorite comment from your favorite comment from Austin case study. What's the phrase that pays? You're trying to minimize what?
Try to create more products per square foot and labor hour.
There you go. More products per square foot labor hour. There you go. So Christian and Todd, are you guys, when you're planning any sort of implementation of new equipment, new automation, how much are you looking at square footage, right? Like in terms of whether stuff is in line, near line, how do you make decisions based on your available footprint versus labor versus everything?
Okay, so in a perfect world, we'd have a green space to work with, but we don't. We're actually fortunate that we probably have more space than we should. Sometimes we're not as efficient with it as we should be. But I do believe that, we could have done with a new beginning better cell utilization. We end up, just by the nature of our products and as I call the technical term, fluff factor of our very lightweight paper when we're going into binders, we have movement of product that goes too far. And so I think that's a piece. So when it comes to the capital investment, we're obviously looking at how long to pay back, how much revenue we can get at, what sort of margin, obviously. So we take all those factors into consideration, but I wouldn't say for us space is the predominant one, but certainly cell consideration is important.
Okay.
So for us, space is actually pretty important from that standpoint. We look at everything from the standpoint of, and Ian, you could speak to this probably better than I can as a cost accountant for us, but space equates into everything. It goes into the cost of the machine, goes into, the cost of our BHRs, the material movement. We try to be as lean and run as much of a lean manufacturing environment as we can to not have a lot of product on the floor, produce it when it's ready to go out the door. I know that's not always realistic and possible, but in terms of a best practice, so that space and that per square foot cost is becoming more and more important for us, especially as, nothing's going down in price, whether it's energy, whether it's the cost per square foot of building a building anymore. It all adds up.
Okay. In terms of just blue sky, you get to, let's just say we're 10 years, moving 10 years down the road. What would you see as your, blue ocean best case scenario with regards to how everything, your manufacturing process evolves with regards to automation and people? I'm letting you paint your picture however you
So
want.
somebody's giving us a blank check.
Within reason.
So for us, it is really grabbing a hold of the latest technology. As we've been talking about, as we looked at really embracing, I guess, the 5.0 strategy of that integration, whether it's from the AI and the robotics to the human collaboration. A lot of our employees, as I'm sure everybody is very concerned about what does it mean for manual labor and for their jobs. And it's really, as a company, we want the best of both worlds. We want to have those employees engaged. We want them learning. We want them excited to come to work. We want them to be able to drive that technology that's going to let us be a little bit more lean, more automated. We would have as much inline finishing as possible. We would have the equipment that's going to feed the data back to us. That's going to eliminate a lot of the manual data entry. It's going to allow us to schedule our jobs accurately and track our jobs accurately. That's going to utilize AI to be able to make decisions for quality, what's acceptable, what's not, give real-time feedback to the equipment, the predictive maintenance side of it, to be able to know and to be able to plan whether or not a bearing is starting to overheat and we need to order it a week in advance so we don't have to overnight it from Europe or whatever it may be, and we can plan the downtime and the schedule around it. So I think there's a lot that's going to happen over the next 5 and 10 years, and we're really excited about it. From our standpoint, I know it's easy to want to not engage with it and to just think it's going to have a negative impact on the industry or on the employees. But for those, I think, that are going to embrace it and move forward with it, there's going to be a lot of benefits to it.
Okay, Todd?
You gave me anything to work with. So I do appreciate Christian's comments about the sort of environment that people want to work in, and that it's exciting and a learning environment. What I would love is that some of the limitations on automation around standardization, the more and more variability that we could have would be incredibly exciting. So that those setups can happen, it can move products of different sizes. So I would say that, moving away from standardization to create more flexibility of automation would be super exciting in the context of what Christian was talking.
Okay. Andy, you want to tell us what you're spending your next 10 years worth of R&D budget on doing?
Well, I say specifically no, but like I said earlier, 95+% is spent on digital finishing. But I want to correct that. I actually misspoke there. It's a hybrid finishing. Muller Martini knows that only 13 to 14%, depending on what statistic you hear. Mark will be an expert on that IT strategy shortly, right, Mark? He stepped out of the room. Damn. So to me, you have to look at finishing as it applies to offset and digital workflows. And we don't shortchange what we're doing for offset either. It's looking at ways to take single systems that can produce both on the same line. And I know you have that, Todd.
We did you one. This is a plug for Muller. We actually went to them back in and I think Steve is here as well. I think maybe back in 2016, and we went to Colbus and we went to Muller Martini, and we said we'd like a hybrid binding line. There's digital lines and there's conventional lines. Would you consider that? And to their credit, they did. And, there was some pain points as we worked through it, but it's a really exciting hybrid line that we use today. And we bought another digital line as well. And I'd say the other thing is, the barcoding that we did together, or your system that allows us to have 2 infinitrams on the back of the Allegro to create a very efficient binding line for short run work. I guess that would be my comment for suppliers, is to be open to those conversations when we bring these things forward and say, is this possible? And I really appreciate, your openness to that. So thank you.
That statement of work, holy cow, and we got it, right, Steve? Rocky just did it up. But so a hybrid binding line, in the case, I use the example of Thomson Reuters. They needed an Lego binder, 7,000 an hour binder for 30 pockets, I think it is, something like that. 27 pocket line for their very thick books and whatnot. But they also were growing on digital. They had some inkjet presses, and they needed to have capacity for both. They could have bought one of each and figured it out, but they said, hey, how about you allow us to gather sets through a gathering line for sewing, while at the same time we're dropping book blocks in to make books on the Allegro. Because when you look at productivity, it's not just about productivity, it's about utilization. So you got to look at a system, and you can't just utilize for one thing, a gatherer for sewing, and then the binder sits there idle. Never the case with you guys. You're always running digital at the same time. And then if they have to, when they're running soft cover or book blocks for hardcover on offset, they just run it through the binder. Hybrid offset digital components together. And similar things on our saddle stitching side, we have exactly the same. And, and the end result is it's the same product quality coming out for both digital and offset. Because why? It's the same machine. So it's a very strong point that we've always driven since the very beginning through partners like Thomson Reuters and many others, several in this room. And we're proud to continue to look at those crazy statement of works and do our best to achieve them.
So, Todd, and this is maybe a little off from automation, but you mentioned it in the kind of realm of automation, is you wanted more variability, which I think I've spent the last 18 months when I talk to every publisher for you guys saying you need to standardize more. Right? I mean, and that's the issue in terms of...
That's my message the other way.
Yeah.
We'll push back. And the rest of the room are the same.
Yeah. But it brings up the point of just in terms of if we're talking 10 years down the road, right? And if we've been beating the drum to publishers around trying to standardize around primarily trim sizes, but mostly paper because of the great paper crunch of 2021, right? Or 22. But how, as I think Dr. Dan said, kind of, sorry, my kid's orthodontist is Dr. Dan, so it's just real easy for me to roll it right off the tongue. Things have to almost be standardized, repetitive things for robots and a lot of this automation and things to learn. Standardization is key. Right. But I think a lot of folks would also start to say that the value that you all as book manufacturers add for the publishers is the uniqueness of a printed book compared to, other things. And then the publishers are saying, well, we have to raise prices, so we need more value in this printed book. So we need special things, cool covers, embossing, whatever, something to make it nice. But we're also trying to push to standardization because that makes it easier to automate. So how do we balance all of that into the next 10 years of book manufacturing?
I'll give you one technology piece here is the Infinitrims gives us a great deal of flexibility on a trim. Now there's waste. There's waste with that, but that's one instance of that being the case. I guess if you have value and you can create enough unique value for a publisher and enough flexibility of having a bit of diversity in your mix, I like that position for us more than being in one specific lane. Although you could highly automate that if everything was standard.
Christian, you?
Yeah. I can respect what you were saying there, Todd, and agree with it, really, because you want to have that flexibility with the variability, whereas it's nice to have the standardization. It would be nice to see the technology come through to give you that variability, whether it's through, AI and the self-learning of equipment in the future, to be able to make those on-the-fly adjustments and whatnot.
When you look back in the beginning of digital, it was 3 substrates, 7 trim sizes, very standard. If you want a book of 1, that's what you got. And Muller and all of our peers developed, first we started with you can trim anything. We got 3,000 trim sizes. We don't care anymore because book-to-book trim is not an issue. Thickness variability, we don't care anymore. Book-to-book thickness variability, we don't care. Slowly but surely, as the demands for more flexibility came out, more and more developments were made by Muller and many other manufacturers to get those two low-hanging fruit capabilities covered. Today, they're covered. So what's next? Is it going to be substrate variability? Is it going to be complete format variability no matter what, and different binding capability? Who knows? But many things have been tackled already. So the standardization that was inherent in the early digital days is gone, or mitigated, not gone. It's been mitigated by some advancements through the input from the print service providers telling us what needs to be done.
But would you say that was, BC, before COVID, and now, we've got all the publishers, but back then, so many moons ago, right? 3 years ago, publishers just went and tried to get whatever done that they could because there was so much extra capacity. Everybody was happy to make whatever book they wanted, and now things have kind of changed, right? The market's a little different now. They're actually saying, "Oh, this paper's okay as a substitute," whereas 5 years ago, no, it has to be this exact grade, this exact opacity, everything. And then they learned, oh, wait, the consumer doesn't know the difference, doesn't care. We're fine with a different kind of paper now. So is there do you see, are your customers, so specifically Todd and Christian, are your customers now more open to the dirty word of standardization in their mind that would potentially allow for more capacity in the industry because you're not changing over everything all the time. You don't have to change paper. You don't have to change everything.
Yeah, I can start with that. So, but we all have many customers. And so, depending on what space you're operating and selling into, there's different standards in education. There's different in professional. We've got all of those going through the plant. So even if we have some standardization in each of those spaces, which is happening, there's still a fair amount of variability.
There is. And I think one thing that's, obviously with the big paper crunch, as you were talking about, Matt, I almost feel that some of that standardization is what they're fighting against with some of the paper, to be able to have more flexibility to utilize stocks that just weren't considered acceptable before, whether it was for the L-high market or whatever it is. And I also think that this is where the whole ESG is really going to have a play on the industry as well, especially from the environmental standpoint. It's going to be about minimizing waste as much as possible.
Yeah, we'll talk supply chain more tomorrow about paper and that sort of thing. But did you have something, Andy?
I just wanted to add something. We recently, Carlos knows this, received a statement of work of a year's worth of production from a publisher looking at it to analyze. And the trims and the whatnot were no problem, but they had 87 different stocks. I think there was 37 50-pound offset stocks that were different. And when you look at file to finished product workflow, that's fantastic when you're optimizing things for the finishing, which is the most challenging part. But how do you handle 37 50-pound offset stocks? You can't. They said gang the work, and in one day there's 17 of those 50-pound offsets. You can't. How do you gang it? Because now you're changing stock. On a roll-fed environment, that's what this is going to be. So we pushed back and just said, listen, can you go to this publisher and say, hey, can we assume one 50-pound offset for the analysis? And they came back and said yes. Didn't mean they had the rights, but they said assume that. So now 87 went down to 11 or whatever it was once we got rid of those multiples inside the same grade. So it doesn't mean it's there, but they understand they're pushing really hard, you guys, and then us, through you guys, because we didn't get this from the publisher. We got this through a PSP to us. And I think that pressure for efficiency and productivity will continue to drive them to a little bit more. Does it really matter if it's this 50-pound versus that 50-pound? Maybe they need 50-pound, but maybe it's too much. We'll see.
Okay. Well, any questions from the audience? Do we want to pick up? Yeah, Steve. I'm coming. So we'll see what I finally log on my steps at the end of the day.
I think we have some of the leaders up there. So my question is for those of us humble civilians out here. When we talk about automation, first of all, customization is the opposite of commoditization. So we want things more standardized, but we don't want to go too far because it's something we offer, we add value. And the most efficient way to automate, no, the most inefficient way to automate is to have one line set up, one press, a finishing line, never changes. We don't need robotics or AI. It never changes. Horrible use of square footage, horrible use of machinery efficiency. So Andy can show some great videos of these wonderful lines with conveyor belts and turners and everything. And that's one way to do things, is to move stuff around. For those of us who have issued some inline work, the more you get into customization, the more efficient it becomes to have somebody pick up stuff at the end and move it to another machine and such. And for that, I can envision something like Boston Dynamics, where they have these things walking around that look like people, and they can land an army of them on a beach and invade a country. But maybe that army could also catch at the end of a press and move stuff over. For you who've already experimented with that, which direction do you see things going? Do we see things that look more like what we call robots from science fiction actually moving things around, or we see more intelligent conveyor belts and systems that move things in a smooth fashion from one machine to another, combined with very high-end scheduling?
To me, it's a little bit of both. I think it really comes down to the shop and the type of products that are being produced, how much money there is to invest, what the layout is of the shop. So I think that, I know that's not answering your question at all, but yeah, so for me, I think it's going to be a mixture of both within a lot of companies out there.
Todd?
I don't know that I have anything more to add. I mean, what I see in terms of automation tells me B and not A. We're closer to. But, the robotics thing is going to come in time, and that would really help sell. And within a cell, give you a little bit more flexibility. So that'll be an interesting one, but I think that's a little longer personally.
Yeah, like stated earlier, that inline example I gave is very unique. You have to have a lot of pretty standard formats and pretty standard paper types. The more norm for the industry is the nearline trying to interconnect intelligent devices that are not physically connected. When I say connectivity in our Finish 4.0 pillars, I meant also electronic connectivity through barcodes, through XML feeds. We can have systems that are roll to roll. That roll gives a manifest back to us, Connex system, and puts a barcode on the roll. You scan the roll, and all of a sudden that data for all the 14 jobs in that roll automatically downloads to the saddle stitcher. And then automatically when you run it, knows what job is being pulled from a barcode. So that kind of interconnectivity in a nearline roll, so you have the capabilities to keep that flexibility. You don't have enough volume of one type of work. So you have to continue with that for sure, because nearline is the most prevalent in digital, most prevalent workflow. So we'll continue to build those solutions, Steve, because we know that's the more populous need.
Well, and I think Dr. Dan said, right, we're not quite there yet. It's $20,000 for a robot that isn't exactly what you need yet. And so maybe 5-10 years down the road, we'll have the ones that land on the beach from the Will Smith movie or whatever. But
And it's interesting, Matt, too, real quick to that point, because so my IT department tells me all the time when we're looking at automation or robotics and whatnot that, and some people may want to cover their ears, that we need to look at print as a form of manufacturing and sometimes step outside of the typical print suppliers and manufacturers and start looking at more robotics-based companies that will come in and partner and develop solutions with their products for you. So say, search, get out there and search and learn and look.
I have an example of that. We have a unique product in our legal space, something called pocket parts. And for like 20 years, we would bring these to Drupa, and they'd laugh at me when I'd come walking with it because they'd see these things, and it's a side stitch directory with a manila on the back. And we just couldn't find a partner, necessarily in the printing space. And so we ended up working with a print partner, but then also another player that had done something for us custom maybe 10 or 15 years ago for gathering these pocket parts. And they built a separate line so that we could take the digital printing off the web and feed it all the way around. And then with barcode, move to the right stitch location based on the thickness so that we could finish that product. And it was, completely a non-print industry player.
So Todd, I have about 20 samples of that job in my office because we took a flying swing at that as well. But I think to Steve's question earlier, I think the degree of automation is obviously very dependent upon the volume band and the complexity level that you're talking about. So higher complexity or more customization, to use Todd's term, is in some cases less adaptable to higher levels of automation. At the Hunkler Innovation Day show, they showed for high-speed continuous feed inkjet, they've got, reel sands that allow you to go back and forth between white and cream, right? That's a fairly simple way to get some level of, flexibility into the substrate arena. But Horizon, for example, is using lots and lots of robotic and inline processes to tackle that very problem, right? Because the problem is different depending upon if you're doing run lengths of 1 or run lengths of 100,000. And, we're actually experimenting with automated guided vehicles to deliver sheets from the back end of a stacker over to a folder, for example. So there's, and I think I would actually echo Andy's comment as well, that we foresee that intelligent marks on the sheet or on the roll are going to be integral to doing this in a more systematic fashion for conveying the information to the machine for the automated setup, but also for the integrity pieces. So data collection is the other key element that hasn't been talked about a lot, but data collection and analysis from our standpoint is another key ingredient that sort of overlays all of this. So it's super interesting. There's a lot of engineering investment on the part of Martini and Horizon and Hunkler and many others that are pushing this ball forward.
Let me add to that, Mark. Very well said, Mark. To me, data collection is key, and it's got to be real time. You're producing products of one, whether it's a variable healthcare ANOC booklet or whatever it might be, and you have to make sure Jimmy, Bobby, and Susie all get their book. And when you're going through a traditional manufacturing process, 3 books were bad, is all you get. With solutions from Horizon, Muller, and others, it's now book 7, Susie's book is bad. And that's because of those intelligent license plates or barcodes, I call them, that come through and let you know. Then you have a roll-to-roll solution, and you go back, you have 7 books out of 10,000 didn't make it. You know which exact 7 didn't make it. And you send that batch job to a cut sheet device because you're not going to put on a roll. And then we have our finishing solutions that can do roll and cut sheet. And you bring it back as a cut sheet to finish the job. And by the way, that same file gets updated because it's the same job ID, so you know you completed that job for an audit trail. That back-end automation is really critical to make sure in this digital variable world you're capturing every product, because there's a lot of compliance issues if in certain financial and healthcare areas. You got to make sure, and we don't guarantee it, but we help with the audit trail in that process.
Well, and to Christian's point, I was lucky enough last year. My wife's family's from Detroit. My brother-in-law got married, went up for the wedding. Before we drove home, it turned out that there's a large trade show I believe it's in Detroit every year, called Automate. And I believe it's at the end of May. So if anybody is going to be in Detroit or near Detroit the end of May, look up the show Automate. So I walked the floor. Yeah, look at that. May 23rd to 25th, because I'm still getting the emails. And I believe it's free to attend. So you can get a show pass just to walk the floor for free. But it is kind of what they were just talking about, demoing all the different stuff that's obviously not book related, but intelligent robots that move really cool things that move pallets around, and cobot arms and all that kind of stuff that Dr. Dan was showing as well. But if anybody's in that area, look up the show Automate. It was pretty darn cool.